We are quite fortunate these days to live in a time where you don't have to get married to someone that your parents arrange for you because family decides or because of financial considerations or all these things. We are very fortunate to live in a time and in a country when we can marry for love. Back then, it wasn't that way, but I think the thing that was really interesting is that there was, even though this is really strange to us arrangement, Isaac and Rebecca were still ended up in love, and it still all worked out with a happy ending. But one of the things about living now that is rather unfortunate in the time when we have, just complete freedom to choose who we date, who we marry, all that kind of stuff, that freedom in our relationships, is that we seem to have forgotten a lot of times that we need the guidance and help of older, more experienced people to help us navigate the course of life with its many twists and turns. And we just very often just sort of have to try and find our own way through things, which I don't think it has to be that way, and I don't really think it's God's design for it to be that way, because if you look at the rest of life, people don't necessarily have to sort out everything on there. I mean, we're surrounded by friends and family and stuff like that. And we don't have to be completely individualistic and just, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, I'll figure it all out myself, and I'll just, there's that horrible Sinatra song, I did it my way, which just makes me want to puke when I hear it, lyrically, but especially the music. And there's this whole individualistic thing, but we don't have to make it that hard on ourselves. We don't have to go through all of life just as individuals trying to find our way, because there is a way for us to be surrounded by help. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit of my own story. I was quite fortunate in that I had a very close relationship with my parents as I was growing up, through most of my life, and my parents, they pretty much decided they were going to be very involved in the relationships that I had. So it was never really an optional thing. That's just the way it was. So I had a good relationship with them. Now, if you remember, 2-3 weeks ago, I talked about the relationships I had with 3 different girls, and girl number 1, the one that I talked about, was sort of dating, close friendship thing that we had. In that relationship, my parents, they encouraged it, and they really built trust with me, and I built trust with them, that as we talked about stuff, I found that that they weren't going to be all really embarrassing and horrible, and that I could trust them, and they gave some freedom to me, and found they could trust me, and that relationship really built trust. Now the second one, the one that I decided I was going to marry, and was terribly mistaken about, and would just, wasted 2 years of my life pining over someone that I was completely incompatible with. My parents pretty much knew from the beginning that we didn't really fit together. They could see that. And they could have just come in and, no, Jeff, don't be an idiot. She's not the girl for you, and you guys aren't gonna, this isn't gonna go anywhere. They could have done that, but they didn't. They provided sort of a safety net for me. They were helpful to me. They sort of gave me a framework to be in, but they let me sort of make some mistakes, and they didn't try to control how I was feeling. They just sort of offered some guidance and offered some safety for me, which I'll talk about safety a bit more. And then when we got to Christine, they knew her quite well. They knew her better than I did, actually, because they were living in South Wales and I was living in America. And they were in the same village as Christine, so they saw her pretty much every day. For a while, she just spent more time at my folks' house than she did at my house. So when I started liking her a bit, my parents got the idea quite quickly that this was a thing that was going to work and was quite good. And really, it was one of those things where I was the last one to find out that I was going to marry Christine, because like she said last week, she knew. My parents, had a pretty good idea. You know, people were looking around saying, "Yes, this is great," and I was one, what? Being a guy, being a bit thick when it comes to things like that. I finally caught on, but it took me a while. But my parents were there again, not to tell me, "You must marry this woman. You'll be married, now you kiss, now go away, make family." Nothing like that. They were there encouraging me, sometimes a bit too much. I wanted to go on this just little walk with Christine picnic, and we took off in my parents' car. And I was like, "Oh, let me pack your picnic." I'm like, "Okay, fine." We get there and started unpacking the box, and there were candle holders and candles in the table. I was just like, "Oh no, what have you done?" Oh, I was so embarrassed. Okay, so they were embarrassing sometimes. I was so embarrassed, and I said,
love hearts. Okay, love hearts.
I said, "Christine, look what my mom put in there," and she just turned bright red and didn't look at me for half an hour. I was just, it was a really cringeful moment. That was before the fireworks event. But again, my parents were there. They had insight. They had insight about all three of those relationships, and they helped me. They helped me from getting too far off track, and they just sort of provided a safety net and protection and encouragement and a bit of understanding and a bit of perspective, and basically helped me sort of eventually get where I needed to be. As you guys are going through your teenage years, there's going to be, probably lots, well, most of you have had lots of different people that you've liked already, and there will be more, and there'll be some people that you have close relationships with, some people that you admire from a distance, and all that stuff is fine, but all those people will be the wrong person until you meet the one who's the right person, and that's okay as long as you have protection, and the protection of which I speak is not sold in the men's toilets for two £2 coins. It's a protection that your parents can offer to you and can provide you with that will help you sort of navigate through your teenage years and through the relationships you have in a way that gets you out on the other side ready to be married and without too much battering and bruising and being ripped apart. As I was growing up, I had protection. First of all, I had a relationship with God where I said, "God, I want you to lead me in relationships, and I want your help." And then I had my parents. And finally, I had my best friend. He somehow had this insight into what kind of girls were good for me, and I probably because we knew each other since we were 7 and spent time together all the time, and he just sort of knew. So I had all these things in my life to help me. So I wasn't just trying to figure it out and sort it out on my own. I had help, and it made it so much easier. It didn't make things entirely easy because relationships are always a bit tricky, but it helped me so much, and it provided all kinds of protection for me.